estimate of 37.48 million tons. U.S. corn futures were higher this morning. The September contract rose 2 cents to $3.49. The Argentina government is forecasting farmers there will plant 9.35 million hectares of corn for the 2018-19 crop year, which is higher than last year's 9.1 million hectares. South Korea has purchased 61,000 tons of corn, which is most likely sourced from the U.S. The purchase price was $209.95 per ton. U.S. wheat futures were all down this morning. The September contract in Chicago dropped 5 cents to $5.17. Kansas City was down 4 cents to $5.23 per bushel, and Minneapolis September wheat fell 3 cents to $5.79. The German government is now forecasting wheat production to be at 19.4 million tons, down from 24 million tons last year. This is due to the drought and hot weather which the country has experienced this summer. U.S. wheat exports are considerably behind where they usually are by this time of year. As of August 16th, total wheat sales and exports were at 8.6 million tons, which is 26% behind last year's pace. The USDA is expecting that wheat sales will end the year up 5.5 million tons, but traders are skeptical the U.S. will be able to catch up. That's a look at the ice futures, canola, and U.S. markets for Friday morning, August 24th in Winnipeg. For Markets Farm, I'm Ashley.
Disc-bind center pivot disc mower conditioners give you closer cutting and faster dry down. Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John can tell you more about New Holland's design features like the Momax 2 cutter bar. It features larger discs that cut more closely with less cutter bar tilt. And the wide dry conditioning systems that are 125 inches wide for consistent dry down and maximum hay quality. Visit Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John and ask about the center pivot disc-bind disc mower conditioners from New Holland.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Boland.
Good morning, Fort St. John. Welcome back to Trev Talks. We had a couple weeks there where we were off the air and I was on holidays, so I appreciate you joining us back today. We're joined on this special episode of Trev Talks because you've been driving around town. You've seen all these signs that have election information and have run for council, run for mayor. So Janet Prestley has joined us from the city of Fort St. John. She is she's the Director of Legislative and Administrative Services, but she's also the Chief Elections Officer, I believe is your official title this week.
Correct.
Something like that. Janet, welcome to Trev Talks. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I was mentioning we see, I think, more, or maybe just it's more awareness. Previous years, I haven't seen the billboards that are up, and we see a lot of Facebook information or Facebook leads as to people running for mayor and council. Fill us in a little bit on what's different this year as far as previous years.
We've actually done an additional awareness campaign regarding the election. So that started with an administration report that went to council, explaining to them the need for increased advertising and awareness. So we have increased our signage. Facebook posts are, well, you'll even see an increase in that over time. We've done presentations to local service groups, so the Rotary Club, Petroleum Association. We did one which was totally awesome at the Energetic Learning Center.
Nice for kids. That's awesome.
So we're doing a huge promotion. We're going to be way more active this year, and in hopes of drawing a larger voter turnout this fall.
Which is good. You know what? I was having a discussion with somebody on Facebook about this and about the voter turnout that we've seen in the last 10 years in the city, and it's diminishing. I mean, the by-election when Dan Davies' seat was filled was the lowest that there had ever been. But I mean, let's base it on general elections. The last general election, what was the turnout in the last one? What, that would have been 2015?
2014.
2014?
15%.
So 15% of eligible voters, which was probably, I'm going to guess, how many people can vote in the city of Fort St. John? I'm going to guess probably 13,000, 14,000.
That one, it was 13,000.
So out of 13,000 people, 15% bothered to show up to vote.
Yeah, 2,000.
Is that normal in the province? I mean, is that a Fort St. John thing, or are we seeing that in Dawson and Prince George and into the south?
No. It was actually dismal for Fort St. John, and we were actually the lowest in the province for percentage-wise.
So the lowest voter turnout in the entire province of British Columbia was in Fort St. John.
For municipalities, correct.
So I mean, there's a lot of things we can brag about, but that's probably not one thing that
We don't want to
we're going to brag about.
that.
Now you've done elections. You've done 11 elections in Fort St. John.
I participated in 11 of them.
That's
Or
insane.
I worked them, yes.
So and just to give people an idea, I mean, just this last one was a 4-year term. Prior to that was every 3 years.
Correct.
So 11 years. So Pat Walsh was the mayor when you were hired for the city of Fort St. John.
Yes.
That's phenomenal. Pat was a great guy. I met Pat when I was a young boy. Sat in his chair and had a good chat with him. So, what's the hopes? Like, I mean, if you were to pinpoint a percentage that might show up or that would show up, where do you hope to see that at with all this extra advertising that's going on?
I would hope at least 30%.
So 30% of 14,000, because that's probably what we're at now, is about 14,000 eligible voters.
We're at
Oh, wow.
15,287.
Wow, we grew.
I
So of 15,000 people, we're hoping for about 30% of voters to turn out. What does it take to vote in the election? How old do you have to be? Tell us a little bit about the guidelines behind who is our ideal voter.
Well, to be eligible to vote, you have to be 18 years of age or older, been within the city for 30 days, within the province for 6 months. You're allowed to vote and you haven't voted yet, and you're not disqualified from voting.
So it's very, very easy to vote.
Very easy to vote.
Very easy to get involved. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, you know, and I don't think people understand that when it comes to running for councillor, running for mayor, we want to see. I mean, councillors want to see, the city wants to see, population wants to see. They want to see an increase of people getting involved, putting their name forward. Of course, there's been news stories lately with, you know, with some people who've come forward that hadn't run or had run in the past and are running again. What does it take to be a candidate? I mean, how difficult is it to want to get involved?
It's not difficult at all. So we do have an election package or a candidates package that's available at City Hall or
Right
online.
now? They can pick it up right now or get
Yeah.
it online right now. Okay.
Yeah, so you can peruse that information. We actually host a candidates one-on-one session, and that's taking place on August the 29th.
August the
So,
29th, we're at Palmer
City Hall?
Right in
From
Chambers?
7
Beautiful.
to 9. So you're actually in that room, so you can see the setting for those people who haven't actually been inside that room. You get a full presentation regarding, you know, the roles and responsibilities of council, what to expect during the election process. The nomination papers don't start, we can't accept them until 9 o'clock on September the 4th.
So September 4th, the nomination papers open, so somebody could drop their papers off 9 a.m. September 4th. What's the deadline for that?
4 o'clock on September the 14th.
So they've got 10 days essentially. So 10 days in order to get that information in, whether they're running for council, running for mayor, or
Correct.
or even in the other areas, if they're going to run for a director in Area C, which is, you know, Charlie Lake, Baldonnel, or Cecil Lake, or school board.
Correct.
Right. This election covers
Yeah.
all three, and I don't think a lot of people realize that too. Is that you've got 3 elections kind of all crammed into this one time period, just depending on where you live and where you want to participate in.
Correct.
Good. So you've done 11 elections. What for you? Tell us what for you are the highlights of the election. What are the holy cow, I can't believe this is happening part of the elections?
My favorite part of the whole election is going to the seniors' facilities.
And doing the votes on site.
We do it on site, so that takes place on October the 18th. So we go to 5 different locations that day. Those residents recognize how important it is to vote. Peace Lutheran they're lined up waiting for us to show up.
Which is
So-
nice. I mean, that's got to be nice when you have such low turnouts in general elections to see people excited about voting, excited about expressing their wishes for what the next 4 years is going to hold.
Exactly. And they're always so thankful that we are actually on site because it allows them the opportunity to vote without going out.
Now, has that always been like that, or is that something
Yeah.
that's been implemented in the last little bit?
No, it's always been like that.
It's always been like that. And then there is curbside voting for people that have mobility issues.
Correct.
Right. So that's explain to us, how does that happen?
So say if somebody's in a vehicle, but it's just too far for them to walk into the polling station, the person that's driving the vehicle would actually either come in to the voting place, come and talk to one of the election officials, and we'll actually run all of that documentation out to the vehicle.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately, and we'll get into this a little bit later too, but there's a lot of talk about online voting and online polling, and kind of stepping up the municipal elections to get with 2019, right? Where it's not what it was 50 years ago. And I think in hopes for that is, trying to catch some of the millennials or catch some of the people that are far too busy or feel they're far too busy in their personal lives in order to vote. What stops that? Like, why can't we have an online voting for the city of Fort St. John?
Because it's provincial legislation.
So the province stops it.
Until the province actually implements that or allows municipality to have that option, we won't be allowed to do it until then.
So, considering that they still can't even get Uber in the province of British Columbia, we may be a ways off with our current government in allowing that, which I do believe is unfortunate, because I think if they would change it up a little bit, it's going to be hard and it's going to be a lot of work, but I think the end result would be huge, right? And I don't think people understand it's not the city that's preventing it, that it is the province. So
I agree.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
If you'd like to see online voting, you need to get a hold of your MLA, and we can certainly give you his private phone number, his home phone number, and his address if you'd like to address him. That's something we always love to do with our local politicians. So we're gonna get ready for a break. We're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna jump back more into the do's and don'ts of this coming up election and the information you need in order to get involved. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
How do you want to drive? At Driving Force, you can rent, buy, or lease your next vehicle. You can rent for a day, a week, or longer. If leasing is what you want, we have thousands of choices. If you're buying, see our selection of certified used vehicles online and shop by make, model, or price. It's your choice. You can rent, buy, or lease for you, your family, or fleet. Go to drivingforce.ca. Driving Force. Get your requests on now for the Wendy's Noon Hour Takeover. Now serving 2 locations in Fort St. John and Dawson Creek. Text us at 250-800-2360.
What makes summer even better? How about a 99-cent Frosty from Wendy's? Pick up your small vanilla or chocolate Frosty for just 99 cents today at Wendy's.
The Noon Hour Takeover, brought to you by Wendy's.
If there's one thing MVP Oilfield Services is known for, well, it's their oilfield services, obviously. Since 2010, MVP Oilfield Services has been operating in Fort St. John, specializing in pipeline company facility construction. But MVP Oilfield is also known for supporting the community they love. They're a proud supporter of Fort St. John minor hockey and junior men's curling, and they're happy to sponsor this year's Movies in the Park. MVP Oilfield Services. Call 250-787-7310.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca. This is Trev Talks with Trevor Bolin.
Welcome back. We are back to Trev Talks again, joined here with Janet. So if you missed us on the first part of the show this morning, we were talking all about elections in the city of Fort St. John. I mean, of course, we even think of our rural neighbors and remind people that they need to get out and vote for their area representatives or directors in that area. So, Janet, we were talking a little bit about off air about mail-in ballots. So,
yes.
For people who are not in the city, explain to us how they can take advantage of this system.
Okay, so mail ballot voting actually allows people who are snowbirds, so they're, in
already
the US
in Yuma or Nanaimo or wherever.
Exactly.
Somewhere
as
warmer
well,
than here.
I mean, and a lot of people think, okay, well, you have to be out of town, which you do, or unavailable to take advantage of the hours of operation for the polling stations. But so oil field workers, I think, is a prime example. My husband is in the oil field.
So if he's
8
in
to
camp,
8, that's
in
right.
camp. So if he's in camp, can he qualify for a mail-in ballot?
Yes.
So as long as they're outside of the city at that time.
That's right, and unavailable to make it to the voting stations during all 3 opportunities.
Wow. What would somebody who actually, and that's a really good question. Would somebody who is in the camp working at Site C, who's in Fort St. John but living in the camp, how does that work? They'd have to come into the city and have a resident, like an address in the city, but make it on those 8 to 8 days.
Yeah.
But if they live in Fort St. John and they're out at wherever up the highway in camp, they can do a mail-in ballot from that time, which I'm assuming they just get off the internet. Where would they get that mail-in information?
No, so they would contact Laura. She's our deputy chief election officer. Yeah. So they can do it 3 ways. I mean, they can email us, they can phone us, they can, old school fax us.
Nice.
The information required for us to actually mail them out a ballot. For example, during the 2017 by-election, I actually couriered a mail-in ballot package to Nova Scotia because
So
they
could
were
vote
on
'cause they were
holidays. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I mean, you know what? And I don't like to say this, and you see this being said lots already, but there's really no reason people can't vote,
Definitely not.
right? So when does advance voting? What are the days of advance voting?
So our two advance voting days is October the 10th and October the 17th.
My birthday. Nice.
I know it is.
Nice advance voting on my birthday. So October 10th and October
17th.
and those are 8
Yeah.
to 8 as well.
Correct.
So you've got 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on the 10th and the 17th.
Yes.
And then you've got general vote is
October 20th.
October 20th, which is 8 to 8 as well.
Yes.
Where are they being held this year? Do you know already?
In anticipation of increased voter turnout,
Yeah.
we're actually having it at the Legion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So bigger venue, parking is closer
Yeah.
for those. And I mean, the province did change it from November to October. So here's hoping we don't have an early onset of winter.
Agreed.
But-
Agreed. So we've got October. So all votes will be cast at the Legion, advance voting and general voting.
Correct.
So people can put in their calendar October 10th, October 17th, do their advance voting, get that done with in case they are gone. Mail-in ballots,
Yes.
which they can get a hold of you or get a hold of Laura at the city in order
Yeah.
to do that. That's awesome. So lots of opportunity. So we were talking a little bit about people getting involved. So, I mean, of course, when there's a mayoral election, I think you probably have tended to see more people get involved in the past.
Definitely.
So what does that do? What does that do when there's 2 or 3 people running for the mayor's seat? Does that increase it by 5%? Does it increase it by 10%? Is that
About-
where the numbers used to be?
Well, about 8% actually.
So about an 8% increase when there's a
Yeah.
mayor. That's interesting. That's actually interesting that that's down to a science. So
I did that calculation this morning.
so you knew that was going to be asked. Have we seen it drop? Like, have we seen it? You've been around since Pat Walsh. So I mean, I think if people were to think back, I think the mayors they remember, of course, is Her Worship Lori Ackerman because she's current and she's here and she's been the mayor now for 2 terms as the mayor. Of course, Steve Thorlickson prior to that,
Yes.
which you would have worked for a long time.
A long time, yeah.
Steve was the mayor for 5 terms.
From 1990 to 2005,
Wow,
if I
1990.
remember correctly.
That's incredible. Of course, and then Pat Walsh.
Yes.
So, but was Pat directly before Steve?
Yes.
He was, okay. So 19. What was Pat? Pat was 1986.
Yes.
Okay, so you've been around since 1986. So have we seen?
No, I've been around since 1989.
Oh, 1989. Sorry. But in the Walsh days, have you seen the numbers? I mean, have they continually dwindled, or was there a point in time where there was a larger voter turnout, or has it been, since Pat was mayor and Steve? I mean, Steve ran unopposed in quite a few elections, and acclamation, and Lori, of course, right now has been. She had an acclamation in the last election.
Correct.
So we've had a lot of acclamations probably in the past 25 years. So, I mean, is that, and I mean, I get that you said the 8%, but is that always been our trend? Have we been on a downward trend since the Walsh days?
No, not necessarily. The 2005 election, actually, so we just have statistics from 1993 to
Okay.
2017.
We try to forget the 80s. It's okay, I do that
Well,
too.
I couldn't dig up all of that background information because unfortunately a lot of that is gone. But so between that time frame, the largest election turnout was the 2005 election.
Why?
And that
What
was-
do you remember being? What do you remember about that election that was different than the other ones? Was there more candidates? More? I'm trying to think. That's when Jimmy Glinsky became mayor?
Correct.
So that's when
Yeah.
Thorlickson.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the news stories, of course, of the day about Steve. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember. So that was 2005. So I mean, you get, and I mean, it's as I sit back now and I think as ridiculous as those news stories were, and of course those are my own opinions, that people actually held that against him. So that's what really brings out the voters is quote scandal unquote.
Well, I mean, there definitely has to be some burning issue, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term, to actually get voters out. The unfortunate part, though, is even if a mayor's acclaimed, there's still 6 other people that are on council
yeah.
that make a decision.
That make the decision.
That's right.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I mean, the mayor, although seems to be, definitely the head position, and I mean, it's definitely not an easy position. I've looked at her calendar before, and I just shake my head, and I've told her that. But I think a lot of people assume that it's Lori's job, it's Lori's fault, and no matter what council does, that the mayor still has that final say, but they don't.
That's correct.
It's one vote, just like everybody else on the table. So,
that's right.
I mean, really, if we're to look at it that way, then the most important vote you could place would be on your council.
Yes.
Right? Not on your mayor.
Yeah.
You need to check out or check 6 of those council members. More important than just maybe that one vote.
That's right.
But it's funny,
and it's up to 6.
It's
right?
up to 6.
You can go and look at the slate and go, okay, well, I'm only going to select 2.
Yeah.
Or 1.
Or 4 or 5,
That's
whatever they
right.
want. Whatever they want.
Yeah,
So
up to 6.
So literally 10 minutes of their lives. Open 8 to 8, mail-in ballots, and they can vote up to 6. So that's the voter side. So tell us a little bit. Somebody's listening to us either now or they're catching the show later on Facebook Live or YouTube or all the glorious places that we have it in today's world. Why do they want to be a counselor? Right? You've worked with more counselors and more mayors than probably anybody. Why would somebody want to be a counselor? I should have asked you this a long time ago.
Well, for my mind, even as an employee, you're contributing to the community that you love, right? So being on council, you're making those decisions for the future, for the betterment of the community.
Agreed.
And there's a lot of debate that goes on in those council meetings to arrive at a decision.
So what do they have to look at as a commitment, right? Where somebody's, again, sitting back thinking, okay, counselors make what? Counselors make $21,000 now?
No, it's now $30,000.
$30,000?
As of last November.
Right. So that was the first increase that happened in a decade.
Yes.
So council has gotten that remuneration or that pay up now where it should have been probably 10 years ago. I remember seeing the studies on the media. So they're going to make $31,000. Is that what you said, $31,000? What's the commitment to that? Right? They're thinking about their normal lives. They're thinking about their normal jobs. They're thinking, I make 42 at work or I make 60 at work. This $31,000 doesn't really entice people to be a counselor. It'll pay them for the time that they spend there. What kind of timing are they looking at?
Well, your Mondays are essentially, they should be blocked off. Guaranteed. Well, every second Monday for sure.
Or budget season.
Or budget
Monday.
season, it's every Monday. It depends on the committees that are selected. And council as a whole makes that determination as to which counselor sits on which committee. Sorry.
So every second Mondays, some committees, but they're always a counselor.
Correct.
Right? When you're grocery shopping, when you're at the museum taking your kids there, when you're at the block party that Moose FM has coming up here this next month, you're always a counselor. But that's what that's there for. Mayor's pay, again, that was increased. They voted on that to increase it to 80,000.
81.
So it went from 63 to 81.
Correct.
Again, first raise in a decade. That was probably long overdue for that position. As I said, I've seen what her weeks entail. I'm not trying to scare anybody. They need to be aware of what that is.
The commitment level, for sure.
What is the mayor's commitment letter? Forever Fort St. John was considered having a part-time mayor. I remember the days of Steve Thorlickson and even Jimmy Glinsky, and it was considered a part-time job. Obviously, that's changed.
Well, it wasn't even then, though.
So it was just the media that said that. Those media guys.
Well, that's my perception of it.
It was never
busy.
part-time.
They were busy back then as well.
Yeah.
So
what's the mayor? The mayor's is that what are people looking at? Monday to Friday, 8 to 5? Is that right? How does that work out? Tell us.
It's a lot of commitment.
So
because
12 hours a day.
Well, it's not just meetings, right? So there's special events that you get invited to. There's conferences, speaking engagements.
Which is big for the city of Fort St. John to have a representative such as the mayor at that. The other thing I think that's changed too is that nobody ever really gives credit to is the amount of emails, text messaging. You know what I mean? 20 years ago, you were the mayor, you were a counselor, or even a VP or in the corporate life, and you'd get mail, and 7 days later you'd reply, and they'd get the letter 14 days later. Exactly. You know what I mean? And faxes kind of changed that now. And I don't think what people fully understand is that the amount of emails, text messages, requests, Facebook that the mayor and the council get is probably astronomical. And never really viewed as that. But again, you're always the mayor. You're always a councillor. You're
right.
always the election officer, right?
Yeah.
So it is easy to get involved. It is easy to vote. If you are interested in running for mayor or council, of course they can pick up their nomination package or get it online. You said.
Yeah.
Nominations are to be sent in by September 4th to the 14th.
Correct.
Okay, so September 4th to 14th. What do you need? What do you need in order to have a nomination? I mean, we went over the fact you got to live in the city, or you don't need to live in the city to be a mayor or council, but you have to. What you have to have lived in. Is there anything that they need to look out for if they're wanting to get involved?
Well, they have to be in the province for 6 months.
So in the province of BC for 6 months.
And that's pretty much your only stipulation, as well as the people that are nominating you, and you need two.
So two people to nominate you. So you need
Correct.
2 friends. Do they need to live in the city?
Yes.
So you need
Yeah.
2 friends that live in the city of Fort St. John that are willing to publicly sign your nomination, because I imagine that does get released.
It's posted.
Right? So
Yeah.
you want to make sure you pick somebody that does like you, at least a little bit, or that's willing to back you up. And then, of course, they bring their nomination papers into you.
Yes, please.
Okay, so you heard it here on Trev Talks. If you are interested in running for council or mayor, it is very simple to do so. But even more importantly, if you're not interested in getting involved at that level, you need to get involved in the vote level. Janet would like to see a 30% voter turnout this year.
I would love that.
She would love that. So if you want to make this lady's wishes come true, you need to get out and vote. You've got ample opportunity. Any questions on how to do that? Of course, it's going to be on the city's website, or probably already is. I
Yes.
see it on Facebook a lot,
Yeah.
right? So the city's
Yeah.
Facebook page. So follow the city's Facebook page. Get on their website, check it out. You've got ample opportunity. Janet, we extremely appreciate the time that you've taken in order to enlighten us on what the history is. How many elections you've been involved in should actually blow most people's minds. I don't think there's
You
politicians.
keep making me feel old.
Don't feel old. Feel knowledgeable. There isn't politicians that have been involved in that many elections, right? So I mean, that's it's not a bad thing. It's an impressive thing. If anybody wants to know anything about elections, you are the person in BC to go to, which I think is why the province even uses you as much as I've heard they do. So again, get involved. Janet, thanks so much for joining us. This has been another episode of Trev Talks, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our community first. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Bolin.